Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and another episode of our Look Back show where we look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago and see how they're doing in the market now. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from August 18th, 2023, and I'm recording this on February 17th, 2024. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is actually most relevant because the market is always moving and changing, as you'll see just in the difference in prices from these 6 months. Also, as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Each week they put out a list of 10 comics that are hot, that are moving in the market, that are increasing in value or increasing in sales. And we look back to see how they're doing 6 months later. Why do we do this? Basically, trying to just inform ourselves about what factors make a book hot at any given time, what factors affect it later, so that we make better decisions about which books are worth probably chasing in the moment, which books you should be patient on. So let's see what we can learn this week. First up, we got Batman Damned, number 1. This is a bit of a blast from the past, sort of, back when I first started doing this. Obviously, this is the first Batawang. This was a controversial book. It went for big money when it first came out. It had come way back, but it was back in the news because they were talking about a book where Spidey's basically the first Spidey Wang, I guess, or something. So Tom and them were talking about it and it caused a 300% increase in sales of this book just because I'm talking about some book where we had a similar thing happen with Spider-Man. And yeah, back then copies were going for $25, 9.8 going for $100, which all of that just seems crazy. And now it's actually going for more, at least on the raw side. 9.8s are still the same value, right at 90 to 100. But raw copies are now 30 to 65. And obviously this is a book you can get in a 9.9, you can get in a 10.0 relatively easily compared to most books. So that's part of why raw copies are going for that high when the 9.8 is only around $100. 9.9 is only around $200 though. So yeah, but people are it's still up and worth it on the raw side, which is most of the sales here. So super surprised by this, but people want to see that, I guess. I don't know. Next, we have Cadet U. This show finally dropped on Netflix back then, which is why, even though it really didn't advertise it, which is why it's hitting the list again, it still wasn't getting as high as some of the lead up when we were getting an announcement that it was coming. They just kind of released it. And back then, raw copies were going for 20, but 9.8 only go back up to like $50. Now it's a $3 to $15 book. This was definitely a trap. There was no sustainability here. Netflix really didn't appear to put anything behind the show. And yeah, as a result, this book is not really worth that much. Next, we have Toxic Avenger, number 1. I think we got a trailer or something, but we got an announcement the movie was coming in September. I don't know if the movie even came out. I don't remember really hearing anything about this movie other than this. But raw copies were up to 25. 9.8 was hitting 200 back then. Now it's a $10 to $30 book for raw copy. 9.8, 160 to 200. So we're going to call it down and I'll be back. It's definitely taking a slight step back. Not a huge step, which I kind of figured it might. I have no idea. Did anyone see this movie? Let me know in the comments if you saw this movie, if it was any good. I don't even remember it actually coming out. I remember them saying it was going to come out, but I don't remember it actually coming out. So maybe I was under a rock. I don't know. Next, we have TMNT, The Last Ronin, number 1. This hit the list again because we got a trailer for the game that's coming that's based on this part of the TNT, this alternate universe or alternate future TMNT book. So there's a game coming, and we got a trailer for it back then. Raw copies were going for 60. This is another book that you can get really high grade stuff in. So 9.9s is what they were looking at here. $450 for a 9.9 back then. Now it's a $60 to $100 book. 9.9, $450 to $600. So we've gotten some other like new series have come out in this universe, like a follow-up and stuff. So people love this TMNT Last Ronin stuff. So it continues to go for big money. I really thought it would be an I'll be back that once you got away from the game, but there's been enough other stuff to keep this one going forward. So it has been up, and I called this straight cash. So, all right, next. We have Startling Terror Tales, number 11. This is a super hard to find Golden Age cover that's very popular. Back then, a raw copy went for $2,400, even though it had a detached cover. 4.0 was the most recent slab sale, went for $11,000. Hard to judge where this book is at. It hasn't been. There's only one recent sale I could find. It was a 1.0, went for $3,000. We're just going to call it steady and worth it. You could say it doesn't always jump in value every time you get sales, but this book is very popular. It's not really going to take a step back. People are going to, pay what they're willing to pay for it. Doesn't mean you can't find a deal, but we're just going to put this as a steady and worth it category because there's not a lot of data here to really go off of. All right, next we have Alpha Flight, #1 from 2023, the Art Adams 1 in 50. And this is one of the many Art Adams books we've gotten here recently that have been these incentive Art Adams covers that people have chased like crazy when they first come out. This one in its first week out was going for $80 to $100. This is one of the ones I kind of like the least, but did not matter. This is now an $80 to $150 book. So it is up in straight cash from that first week when it was released. I will say that this book hit the list multiple weeks, and it went much higher than this first week value originally. So we'll see how much it held to the peak of right after it came out. But this week, it definitely, from that very first week, you did okay if you went on and bought it during that very first week. Next, we have Captain Marvel, Dark Tempest, #1, the second print Rico cover. It's a 1 in 25 on the second print. It was going for $75 back then. It's just a version of one of the first print covers, but it was going for $75. Now there's only been one recent sale. It was $45. That's a trap. There are a few of these out there unlisted, but not really selling. So definitely this one turned into a trap. Next, our last cover of this week is Edge of Spider-Verse, #3. Another second print, 1 in 25. This is the Humberto Ramos Spider-Boy cover. The book is its origin. So back then it was going for this 1 in 25 on the second print was going for $50. Now it's a $20 to $30 book. 9.8s are going for $100 to $120, but that's still a trap. Still not really worth what it was going for back then. All right, with that, we only had one kind of true comic buzz book this week. I will say, if you've been noticing, we've done pretty well this week, much better than a typical week. You'll see that at the very end. But we had Uncanny XMen #100, just a great book. Early Claremont XMen, the first time the two teams fight, first fastball special. It wasn't really necessarily any specific news here other than this book had come back quite a bit from the comic boom in 2021. So prices had dropped down quite a bit, so people were starting to buy it again, starting to get into it. Raw copies were going for $50 to $200 back then. 9.4, $395 to $525 were the two sales that they'd had recently on a 9.4. Now it's a $500 to $500 book, or $50 to $500 book, I should say. Most of the sales were more in that $50 to $200 range it was before, but there were a couple of really high grade copies that pushed up toward $500. So that's where that comes from in terms of the different range there. 9.4, $270, and $430 for the most recent sales. So you could say both those sales are a slight step back from those two, but we're going to call this a steady and an all be back. You can find deals here, but this is a pretty consistent book, pretty consistent performer, and probably worth your time for sure. Next, we have a couple of DCU spec kind of books. We have Wonder Woman Historia, The Amazons, #1. This is hitting the list because there's rumors about this being the basis for a project in James Gunn's new DCU featuring some Amazons and Wonder Woman characters. Back then, raw copies were going for $20. 9.8 hit $85. Now it's a $10 to $35 book for a raw copy, so a huge range on that for a raw copy of a really recent book. So we're going to call this one steady worth it. Most of the sales are in that 20 or above range with just a few underneath. So, all right, next we have Infinite Crisis, #5. This is Blue Beetle movie was out, or was it out or was it about to come out? I think it was out at this point. I didn't actually write that in my notes. First time he raises as Blue Beetle. Jim Lee cover. 9.8 was hitting $225 back then. And now raw copies were 10 to 25, 9.8, 125 to 175. So this has turned into a trap. I think a lot of people enjoyed that movie quite a bit. I think it was pretty popular, but didn't sustain this book. This is not a surprise. This is what happens even when the movie's good. Generally, is the books take a big step back after the movie comes and goes. All right, with that, we're moving into some MCU Spec. We got Avengers number 35. The first cover appearance of Sam as Captain America, and also the first part of the Incursion storyline. And that is, there was rumors here of that being the storyline for a Doctor Strange 3. So that's what was kind of driving this. Raw copies were going for 15, 9.8 going for 100. Now it's a cover price, the $15 book, 9.8 going for 75. So we're going to call this another down, and I'll be back. Definitely a book that you can get, and you didn't really need to chase after. Next, we have Uncanny Avengers Annual number 1, the first appearance of Emerald Warlock. So yeah, this is basically the rumor that Aubrey Plaza is playing a Green Witch character that doesn't really exist. Although I think there's now a character that sort of fits this bill. So people were thinking maybe that was going to be a altered version of the Emerald Warlock, which was causing people to chase this. It was a bunch of sales, but it was only like $5 on average. Now it's a $2 to $6 book. So we're going to call this just steady, and I'll be back. There was no reason to really chase this back then. It wasn't going for much over cover. Still basically going for cover now. So next, we have New XMen number 114. First appearance of Cassandra Nova, the sister of Charles Xavier, and this was rumors that she was going to be one of the villains in the Deadpool movie. Raw copies back then were going for 20, 9.8 going for 300. We just got the trailer. There was a character that sort of might be her, maybe, at least based on the images. People are specking that, so we just had that happen. So how's that affected prices? Still a $10 to $20 book, 100 to 175 for 9.8 this week. So yeah, there's still a down, and I'll be back from the initial spec, even though we got more spec just this week. So we'll see if this happens or not. All right, next we have Dazzler number 1, the first solo series for Dazzler. 9.8 was going for 200 back then because Taylor Swift is going to be a Deadpool. Those were the rumors. Still have no confirmation on that. Now it's a $10 to $30 book raw, 9.8, 175 to 300 though, and most of those 9.8 sales are above the $200 mark, even though there was a couple sales under 200 down to 175. Most of the sales are actually closer to 300 than 200 even. So yeah, we're going to call this up worth it. Definitely in that range. You could definitely get it around 200 or so still. So you didn't lose anything if you bought it back then, at least not yet. We'll see what happens after the movie comes and goes, and maybe she doesn't appear. Next, we have X-Men 130, the first appearance of Dazzler. Same thing going on here. Raw copies, 1 to 235 back then, 9.8, 1550. And now it's a $1 to $300 book raw, $1,500 to $1,900 for 9.8. So another up and worth it, maybe an up and straight cash actually at this point. I have my doubts that buying in at these values is going to be straight cash once that movie comes and goes, but so far it has continued to maintain momentum based just off rumors that Taylor Swift is going to play this character. So that's this week's list. As you can see, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up books this week, which is almost never happens to have that many. We had 1, 2, 3, 4 additional steady books and only like 7 down books. So this was this week the list did much better than typical, but you can see the reasons for that. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time. Later.